Now, the rest of the story.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. And, hey, dude, kind of a good indicator as to why it's such a challenge to try to make hay this time of year. I mean, the talking hand is going. Granted, the sun hasn't hit these shaded areas yet, but the overnight dew is pretty heavy. So that's kind of what we're working with. Got everything cut last night, and if you saw my Instagram post, that's a pretty common occurrence of running short. He's eating the corn, dude. I mean, I'm picking these up because they're knocked over and they're not going to make it to the corn head, through the corn head. So I got cows that'll eat it and a dog that may have them all cleaned up by the time I get back to the farm. But as I was saying, for how heavy the dews are, it takes a little bit for that water to burn off. And with everything that was cut last night, I'm done cutting hay for the year. And I have every intention of going down and tedding out some of it. Not all of it. The reason being is because it's third cut, which I'm not really getting all too excited about it being light for third cut, because even my buddy, he was cutting third cut alfalfa, and he said that, see how it's starting to get gross, cows will eat it. Him cutting his third cut, he said that the new seeding that was just seeded this year was like waist high, but he said any of the older established hay, he says it was maybe ankle high or so. And this is a guy, it's my buddy Ryan, if I haven't said that. He normally does try to go through and spray, it's not nitrogen, radiate, and then I think it's riser. It's a type of fertilizer, but it's not the streamed on liquid 32% that I was doing. And ultimately I didn't do that for my third cut, which I think was the right decision. With nitrogen prices where they were and what they were doing at that point in time, I don't think it was worth the money to roll the dice and hope, I think is the appropriate way to say that. Hope that I would have made my money back on it. So like for what we just did last night, 120 acres is on the ground. Currently all I'm really out is the fuel, maintenance, the time it took to do that, which you want to at least make sure it's going to be worth your time to a certain degree, because making the valley is typically a week job. In regards to, by the time you cut it, like I'm going to ted maybe a quarter of it today, just the heavy areas. The rest of it we did lay out flat, and with the blue sky and the sun they're predicting for the later half of this day, I'm feeling fairly comfortable that we made the right decision and we actually have a decent chance of getting this stuff dry. Because next week, granted they are calling for warmer weather, but they're not calling for any sunlight. They're calling for pretty persistent clouds. And this time of year, for how wet the overnight dew is, for how heavy it is, if you're not getting the sunlight and the heat, you're not going to get it dry. It goes back to, what was it, 2 years where we had all that heavy smoke in the fall, and basically if I didn't ted it, it wouldn't even get remotely close to dry. And then it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, much like it actually was here with that stuff last week of Dad's and Ryan's that laid for so long. It never got any sunlight, just heat. Well, without any sunlight. It's 2 in the afternoon before you can even think about raking it, and then you're almost basically chasing the rake out of the field trying to get it baled. And here is one of my trials. This is the start, the upper start of it. So my 12 rows, it's 12, 12, 12, 12, 12. So I made sure I went down and back, and I got the first 12. Okay, the reason I did 12 rows is because it's a 12 row corn head, and I'm doing 12 passes, so, or 12 rows, so that way the 6 row cultivator, I'm only doing 6 rows, so down and back is the equivalent of a full pass with the corn head. So down to the end of these rows, it's the first 12 cultivated with fertilizer, then the next pass is just cultivated, then the center pass, the third pass ultimately, is not been cultivated at all. It hasn't been touched. I skipped those 12. Those are my control, so that way I have a trial on this side. I have a control that, you know, this is what it would do without doing anything to it. And then once again, the next 12 rows below that was cultivated with fertilizer, and then the next 12 rows below that was just cultivated. 100% of this farm was Y-dropped, so I don't have any trials of no Y-dropping whatsoever, but I was just sent some trial results, some mapping results of the actual plant health on some ground that was Y-dropped and hit with anhydrous, you know, like comparing them. And the Y dropping actually produced a healthier plant. Healthier plant should ultimately mean better yields. Not guaranteed, but you're not going to get top end yields consistently with a lower health plant. So, all right, I'm going to find a few more of these ears here because I got to keep my cows tame, which is essentially all I'm doing with throwing them grain. I got a little bit of that grain left, and I'll be out. That grain is left over from last year, and I want to have a little bit more shelled corn on hand, and I was planning on refilling that bulk bin this fall if I can justify it, as in it's got to be dry coming out of the field. I can't put anything that's requires any kind of drying in my bulk bin because it'll go bad on me, because it's looking like I'm gonna have some late season feeder steers to feed. I'll be at 2 or 3, and just having the option to throw in some grain to them, it just is nice, because I'm not buying feed in season. I'll grass feed them before I actually have to go buy feed. So if I can't produce it, they don't get it. I figure you guys will like the early morning, not even early morning, it's 10 o'clock, but it's just takes the sun that long to really get up and going anymore. So I'll talk to you guys in a little bit. The dog is once again holding down the machine shed floor, and I figure you guys could at least see what it looks like after the disc bind has been gone through and is ready to be put away for the season. Now, I could have gone through and washed it off with the pressure washer, but in my years of experience, which aren't as, I mean, maybe as long as most, but I actually used the air hose. A pretty useful way to clean off machinery, almost a little bit more effective than water, because the problem is when you use water, it'll hit the area of dirt or material that you're trying to clean off, and it just spews it everywhere, which is what air does, right? But the trick is, when it's water, it gets everything wet and tacky and muddy, and it sticks everywhere. So then you have to go to a method of start at the top and work down, which is generally how that gets cleaned every year. But I went through, I used the air hose on that too. Like 90% of the work it takes to clean the combine off, or most machinery off, is the air hose, and then 10%, 30 minutes of the pressure washer, and that gets it about as close to clean as it really can get without me doing a deep clean. And I wanted you guys to see all the dirt on the ground. This is all cleaned up literally from the air hose. I mean, we just got done using it last night, and everything was built up on this conditioner. All the sides, all the shields and everything. I said in my previous video cutting hay that I was hitting the ground more than what I normally do, and I really wasn't too happy about it. And the thing is, when you see that tuft of dirt fall out from underneath the mower, you dig these into the ground, they will peel up a fair amount of dirt if you let it. But then all the dirt gets blown back through the machine, and it gets hung up and builds up on the machine. I mean, up through there, I mean, that can get built up pretty bad. So going through with the air hose, the mud, the dirt is still damp. So the air hose actually is able to pry underneath it and peel it off really easily. And I'll go through and I'll turn the mower on, and it'll blow all this stuff out to where it's good to go. I mean, I just don't want it to sit all winter with all this dirt and mud caked up on it, because that's a lot of weight sitting on this mower for the rest of the year. I went through, I turned all the blades around because they're still good. They were brand new when I went down to the valley. They're meant to be flipped over, so they're flipped, it's greased, it's cleaned off. I mean, another reason that you don't want to go through and hit it with the pressure washer, or hit machines with the pressure washer and then put them away for storage for the year, is high pressure water can, if you're not being careful, get in underneath seals, and then you're trapping water in the machine, which will then freeze, rust, and create all sorts of headaches. But I'm very, very satisfied with just going through and hitting it with the air hose, and it's greased and everything. It's set up so one of two things can happen. If for any reason we need to hook back up to it yet this fall, I can literally hook up to it and go cut without having to worry about working on it at all. I generally like to do that to all of our equipment when we put it away for the year. If we have the time, I'd like to go through and work on it. With next year, we don't know how soon or how much of a rush it'll be when we actually are able to go ahead and cut first cut. And once again, was it this year or last year? I think it was this year. It was a very quick get up and go for starting to cut hay this year for what the stuff that we first started to cut. And having the machine that is ready to go is a big convenience, because you don't know where you're going to be sitting at weather-wise, as far as what time of the calendar, what part of the calendar you're on next year when you're done with planting, or you're trying to get done planting, and vice versa. So one thing I'm going to touch on quick, this is the hydraulic cylinder that controls the cutter bar tilt, and I adjust that a lot. It is ran off of the raise and lower for the machine, so when the machine itself sets all the way down, then the cutter bar will tilt all the way ahead. So if you see in the videos of me running this, what you'll tend to see me do is I'm breaking the lift cylinder just ever so slightly, to tip back to apply just enough pressure where it's pulling back the cutter bar, so that way the teeth aren't quite so close to the ground and I run the risk of skimming the ground. I also do that when I'm trying to leave a lot of stubble. So what I would like to do, and I gotta check into the wiring or the routing, just be certain that I can do it, because either I was going to take these hoses off and take them and get shut-offs put in on them, so I can just a turn valve and shut the flow to these hoses off, so I could have this tilted all the way ahead or all the way backward, generally just all the way backward, and lock it up. So when we go to do first cut, you guys won't be hearing me complain next year that we're taking off too much stubble, because the other mower, I can tilt the back out of the way, and that's just where it sits. This is adjustable throughout the day, and knowing that I'm getting a consistent cut because the head is locked all the way back, I think there's a definite advantage there. I mean, there are no plans to upgrade the mower anytime soon, and we're going to be running this for the foreseeable future, so I at least want to make sure that A, we're taking care of it, hence, you know, cleaning it off every year, but B, maintaining it and making sure that you're keeping up all of your bearings and greasing everything, and you're not just letting things go south. I'm not happy about this. This was acquired this year. Got it straightened out, and that's what that's going to be, because the only other way to fix it, I believe, is, I don't know if I can actually buy that whole panel. I can actually probably buy that, but we're probably talking half the price of the mower to replace this shield. I'd hate to bet. So I'm gonna go and hook this, get it put inside and out of the way for the year. I could have just went and started tedding immediately, but the reason I didn't go ahead and do that is because that would have meant I would have had to unhook this, hook onto the tedder, and then go through and hook up to this again just to move it down to its winter storage spot. And at this point in time, I'm not tedding very much down at the valley. I'm tedding just what needs to be tedded, which is maybe a quarter of everything down there. And I plan on going, well, for how heavy the material is, as in not very, I'm probably gonna be able to go about mock chicken and really just kind of burn through this stuff. So I'm gonna keep moving.